Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here with one of my $1 comics. At first, read this and I didn't have many thoughts about it, and I went and put it in the donation pile of where I donate comics to kids and other people. But then I thought about it a bit, I remembered something, and I went and grabbed it out of that donation pile to talk about it a bit. So this is the first chapter of a graphic novel called Superman Unchained. I'm guessing this is from the new 52 era, but I'm not sure. And one of the things that kind of sparked me was that most superhero characters, particularly the iconic ones, the household names, they are popular enough and well understood enough that you should and often you can in a good comic story hop in at any point and get what's going on just based on your prior knowledge of the characters. So I don't know if this is New 52. I don't know if this is an era where he's married to Lois Lane or not, or whether he's just about to get married to her. But it's easy to hop in and say this is a Superman story if you know just like the basic aspects of who Superman is, who Perry White and Jimmy Olsen are, and who Lois Lane are. And a while ago, I talked about Gwenpool needing some normalcy, needing a secondary cast of characters so you know what a normal day is like for Gwenpool, or who she has Christmas dinner with, right? And because Superman has that, it works as a storytelling vehicle, almost like Bugs Bunny, where you don't care about the continuity of Bugs Bunny episodes. Is this the first time he met Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam? Every episode is the first time Bugs Bunny met Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam, because Bugs Bunny Looney Tunes stories, they don't exist in a continuity or in time. They're characters playing out little comedic dramas where each comedic drama is a self-contained story. And there's a funny aspect where if a superhero is iconic and well understood enough, they can function like that, where you can put them in almost any continuity, any weird alternate universe, and people are going to understand instantly the life and the kind of the social circle of Superman and what a day in the life of Superman is like. So this one's illustrated by Jim Lee. I've read a little of his famous X-Men run. I've read Hush. Uh, DNC has kind of suggested in some of his videos that Jim Lee doesn't have the time he used to have to really devote the time to his art like he used to, now that he's got kind of editorial duties. I haven't seen enough Jim Lee art to comment on, the highs and lows of his career, but man, I dug this art. I've got no complaints about Jim Lee's art for this book. It opens with kind of it's a bird, it's a plane gag at Nagasaki, and some Superman, presumably Kryptonian being, is the atom bomb. And this is where I really started connecting with it, because Superman is remembering to his days in Kansas, taking what the kids called the Colder Leap, where they'd go to Farmer Colder's farm and jump into his haystacks, because he was the last old farmer to have haystacks instead of hay bales. And then I remembered something about my own, Midwestern Nebraska upbringing, was that kids would have this thing called detasseling. And detasseling, for most people, you have to explain what the heck it is. But then for Nebraska kids, it was almost sort of a cultural shared experience where every summer, every kid would want to get a detasseling job because you'd make better money than a high schooler could normally make, but it was hot, sweaty work with a bunch of other high schoolers, and everyone would be advertising, looking for high school kids to do this work. High school kids would, hang out with their friends on a hot day and do that, and pretty much detasseling. You see, I didn't even do it. I didn't even participate in that cultural tradition. But you have to go out into the cornfields and remove tassels from the corn, because it's easier for people to do that than for a machine to do that. Still, even in our day and age, I had a gas station job when I was in high school, so that was my kind of summer work experience. But I would always hear my peers talking about detasseling and getting ready for detasseling, and it was a cultural experience unique to the Midwest. And Clark is describing a cultural experience unique to Smallville. So even though I've never snuck into a farmer's house and dived into a bay of hail like that, this resonates with me, this story, because it connects with something from my experience in the Midwest. And I've always liked Superman, even though I've understood kind of like the Boy Scout aspect, the he's too powerful to tell a good story aspect. Maybe the idea that unless you already care about Superman, most of the great stories about Superman assume you care about Superman. And something that clicked for me is he is a Midwestern hero. He's not a cosmopolitan hero. He's a Kansas boy. And uh, this is something that lets a particular group of people possibly may resonate with him. Like Midwestern people particularly might be able to resonate with Superman. Old America, people who came from the 1930s where, they draw Ma and Pa Kent driving a Model T Ford down the street when they found baby Clark Kent. He he resonates with a large segment of America on a personal level where we see ourselves in Clark Kent. And then when he does these superheroic things, what I love about this introduction is he's thinking about an experience from the Midwest in his childhood in Kansas, and then connecting it to the fantastical thing he's doing now. So this is another illustration of a fantastical moment where we're resonating with the character because there is a human, down-to-earth consciousness within him that we connect with. And that gives context to the fantastical, superheroic aspect. So I really dug this whole opening section. I didn't like this transition to vertical. They didn't really signal it, so I read a few pages before I figured out, oh, they flipped me sideways. But man, look at that. I don't know, is that a 3D model? I don't know. I've never seen a ship like that in real life. That looks like fantasy to me. And then look at this, man. Even though I don't dig the sudden switch to a horizontal format, that is some virtuoso. When I said that, I've said of a couple comics they were good and they were professional, but they didn't have virtuoso, which is essentially just showing off, putting all your energy into making a big scene with everything in it. This is a page which says virtuoso in one picture, pretty much. So. And then we're back to normal. And I like that Superman is kind of this reassuring guy. He's promising everybody he's going to get him out of this. It's a fantastical situation, but it's showing us the sympathy and the compassion of Superman, where he doesn't want anyone to get hurt. He wants to save everyone's life. He doesn't want a single casualty in this situation. And then he starts suspecting that Luthor might be behind all of these satellites falling out of orbit and crashing into Earth. And the Luthor-Superman relationship, I think it's almost as cool as the Batman-Joker relationship. But there have been like 50 versions of Batman and Jokers, which is one reason I liked White Knight so much, is it was so unusual for me to see a fresh take on the Batman-Joker superhero supervillain rivalry in 2017. Like, it seemed like it had been done to death. But I think that the Superman-Luthor relationship may not have been beaten to death as much as the Batman-Joker relationship. And did I say A or B? And B, it may even get at something more human and more powerful than the Batman-Joker relationship, because Joker's a psychopath, right? You can be interested in the story about a psychopath, but it's hard to identify with a psychopath. But Luthor is a genius and a scientist. He feels more like a real-world type of person. You'll run into more scientists on the street than you'll run into jokers. And Luthor represents a different worldview and a different philosophy of life than Superman. And just like the Joker, he had his old silly days where he was generic evil scientist type of character, and then over time they kind of gave him this political aspect. They gave him this businessman aspect. There have been different spins or takes on Luthor, but he's always been He's always been a fascinating counterpart to Superman, since he doesn't have any superpowers. He's almost more the Batman kind of underdog in the relationship, because he can't throw himself into Superman like a brick wall. I don't know. That's old hat, that discussion. But I just really dug how Jim Lee drew him, how they're giving him subtle, brilliant stuff that he's doing. He's almost absent-mindedly destroying the Iliad to make a schematic for the city of Metropolis.
There was a confusing moment here where Jimmy was talking about Superman leaving the planet, and I thought he meant planet Earth, kind of like in Superman Returns, where Superman was out in space looking for Krypton. And then I realized, oh, he left the Daily Planet. And one of the reasons that was confusing is that then he's calling Lois and talking about his article, which gave the impression that he was writing an article for the Daily Planet. I would have maybe done a little bit of clarification and had it say, I'm admire the way you left the Daily Planet, so we know it's the newspaper. And again, because it's so iconic, you can kind of quickly understand, oh, they're talking about the Daily Planet, but you'd at least have to read a little Superman or watch a little Superman to know the Daily Planet. You might forget that the Daily Planet is the newspaper where he works, but most people know that Superman works at the Daily Planet. They know that Perry White's the editor of the Daily Planet. They know that Lois is the top reporter at the Daily Planet. She's got some goofy computer stuff going on here, but she's being that kind of tough, fun, sexy first wave feminist reporter that she's always been to some extent. Even in kind of like back in the old Golden Age days where I don't know, feminists always talk about how sexist and problematic old comic books are. You know, when Lois was getting into trouble and was a damsel in distress. But even back then, I don't think that was sexist. I think that she was still kind of she was a tough investigative reporter back then who would just get herself into trouble because she's so committed to getting the scoop and finding out Superman's secret identity and checking out the alien hideout, and then she needs a superpowered individual to get her out of the tight spot she's in. But she's always been a tough, cool character, even way back in the golden age of comics. So Superman goes investigating underwater, trying to figure out what could be the source of all this death and destruction, and then the government reveals that they have a Superman, and they call it the real Superman. So I'm guessing this is a Kryptonian, but I don't know. And I'm intrigued because there are very few villains who can be a physical danger to Superman, and one of the most obvious ones would be another Kryptonian who, whoopsie, the least professional YouTube channel on Earth. We lost the sun, guys. Superman is depowering. Anyway, that's the end of the comic. The free, they have a little preview of the DC Comics Essential graphic novels with one of those cute, cheesy pages I like on the first page. And I dug it. So this was a fun little $1 buy. I'm going to still go donate it, but I'm interested in this graphic novel and seeing the rest of Jim Lee's art because he put so much energy into those first few pages. So I'm #1 Marmaduke fan, catching all the tangents, triggering all the warnings, spoiling all the plot points. Catching you all later.